So I know a lot of people here are wondering, what can we do? What do we do? Things are a mess. How do we stop this? Well, how do we stop Donald Trump? How do we stop Elon Musk? How do we stop these folks? Protest is technically tomorrow. That is correct. April 19th. But let's take a look at the Indivisible weekly discussion. I do like diving into these every so often because I think they have a really good insight into what's going on in Washington, D.C. Ezra Levin and Leah,
all of the
they both have a lot of insight and a lot of connections. They've been doing this for a lot longer than I have. Let's jump in. I'm gonna maybe skip ahead a little bit because they always do a little bit of an introduction.
There. And it's also, it continues to be a little cold in our room here, but thank you for being here. You are joining.
And is this too fast?
At a time of mass movement growth, that is important. As we've heard from Timothy Snyder, the authoritarians, they want you to feel alone. That's what they want. That's not how we're going to fix this. We're not going to fix this alone. We're going to fix this by coming together in big old groups, in local rural areas, in suburban areas, in urban areas, all over the country, organizing the power we have. At Indivisible, our unit of activism is...
This is too fast. Okay.
Not the individual. Obviously, our groups are made up of individuals, but that's not the unit of activism. Our theory of change here is we still live in a constitutional republic. It's a democratic republic. For the time...
Is this okay? This speed?
I mean, we still have that. Donald Trump is one elected official among literally hundreds of thousands of elected officials all throughout this country. Donald Trump wants you to think he's all powerful. That's what he wants. We're not going to give that to him. We are not going to pre-accept that. We are going to recognize that actually power is distributed across this constitutional republic of ours, from dog catcher to senator to yes, US president, but it's everywhere. And the reason we gather in groups is because we understand, unless you're very rich or very famous, you as an individual do not have a ton of power in this republic of ours. But together as groups, we do build power. We do build power. That is why we form in groups, because we're able to build power and influence our electeds. That is the theory. This is how we saved the Affordable Care Act in 2017. This is how we built the largest midterm margins in the history of the Republic in 2018. It's how we pushed Democrats to impeach the bastard in 2019. It's how we defeated him the first time in 2020. It's how we built a blue trifecta in 2021. We stopped the Republican red wave in 2022. In 2023, we won in Kentucky and Virginia. Everywhere MAGA was on the ballot, we lost in 2024. Sometimes that happens. That is terrible. That is where we are right now. We have not lost the democracy, though. We still have a democratic republic, and our response to this loss is not giving up. Is not giving up, is building a broad-based, cross-ideological, pro-democracy, nonviolent movement to retake power and prevent the harm that we can prevent that this administration and their lackeys in Congress want to commit. That's why we join in groups, and you are joining at a time when a lot of groups are joining. We have, on average, somewhere between 10 and 15 new locally led indivisible groups every single day, joining from across the country. So I want to get some love for some of the new...
That's pretty great. Like 10 to 15 new groups per day. That's 10 to 15 different communities in America every day. That's wonderful. That's some real people power right there.
New ones in the last week. We got Woodstock Indivisible in New York. I've actually never been to Woodstock, although I've read a lot about it. It looks beautiful. I would like to make it out there sometime. So welcome Woodstock Indivisible Woodstock to the movement. We've got Cedarburg, Indivisible Cedarburg in Wisconsin. This is, I think you said an exurb of Milwaukee. Wisconsin obviously still celebrating that big Supreme Court race there. Danville, Virginia, Indivisible. Leah, you spent a ton of time in Danville.
I spent a couple months in Danville in 2010 on the 2010 election cycle for working for my boss's reelect. Great area.
Great area, great guy. Indivisible West Houston, and I wanted to call this out, not just because I'm a Texan, and I love Texas, but to point out Indivisible West Houston. There are many cities that have multiple indivisible groups. That's cool. That's great. Sometimes cities are very large. Sometimes neighborhoods are large. My recommendation here would be you should just be coordinating with each other. You should be coordinating with folks across these neighborhoods, across the city. But it is okay to have multiple indivisible groups in the city. Different people are going to organize different people. That's great. We should just be talking with each other. So welcome, Indivisible West Houston. Indivisible Austin, Minnesota. I want to call out, Lee and I both went to school in north of Minnesota, Carlton. And I used to drive from Texas all the way north, 1,100 miles. And I would know I was getting near Northfield, Minnesota, because you would drive through Austin, from Austin, Texas to Austin, Minnesota on the way over. So welcome, Indivisible Austin, Minnesota to the movement. There were dozens of others that I hadn't mentioned because we would spend the entire call on this and we want to get to your questions. But I just want to say, look, we're organizing blue states, red states, purple states. We're organizing exurbs in suburbs, in rural areas, in city centers. That's what makes this movement so powerful, and it's driven by you. Leah and I are talking to you now, but we're not.
I also just really appreciate his upbeat attitude, because like it's so easy to doomer, and like seeing this guy like just bouncing like a golden retriever, energized by this movement, really makes me feel. It makes me feel like maybe things are going to be okay. You know, that's the kind of energy I get.
The leaders of this movement. The leaders of this movement are local indivisible groups who are building power where they are, and identifying the leverage they have to take action. We're going to consume a lot of political news right now in this call, but we're not about consumption here. We're about action. We have a bias towards action. So hopefully we leave these calls thinking about what is the next step we take? What can we practically do to actually fight back in this moment? So that's what we're doing. Leah is going to open up with a little bit of a few comments on the state of the world. So I'm going to cover just the normal logistics of how this go. Most of this is going to be Q&A. If you're brand new here, we answer the questions that you ask, and the way that you ask those questions, there's a little Q&A button that you can click on in the Zoom. And in addition to asking a question, you can vote on questions. And the way we'll do this, we'll go through the top rated questions. That's it. We try to respond to what's on your mind. We think that's the best way to actually have a conversation in this movement about what we're doing together. We used to, up until this time, we used to take questions in ahead of time. And because this voting system has just been so successful, and we haven't had to exercise our own judgment or act like one of those fake town halls, those virtual town halls where people just, the elected officials don't answer real questions. We didn't like that. We wanted to be more real, more.
Do we find another breeding kink couple? No. These people have been hard at work. For those of you who don't know, like, their pedigree, like they were part of like the grassroots movement to get Donald Trump impeached last time around. Like they've been working at this for a while now, and like I think it's coming together for what they had initially envisioned when they started all of this.
Organic. So we're just going to be looking at the questions that come in live that you vote on. You can see what's out there. You can see what's voted. We'll answer what comes up. No filters over here. This is going to be recorded, so everybody knows. Everybody should receive an email right after this with a recording, the resources that we're going to mention, and a survey question that I would really like if you could fill out. It helps us. It helps guide us. It helps drive the organization in certain directions. It helps us make improvements to these calls. So it would be great if you did that. We'll be posting links in the chat to all of these resources as we go. The chat's really fast, and so if you don't catch it, no sweat. You're going to get an email with everything there. Last thing I'll say that Leah always says, and I think it's really important, this is a really hard time to be organizing for democracy. In addition to normal life stuff, we have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Life is hectic. Sleep is not plentiful. And in addition to just normal life stuff, we're all here to fight for our democracy. And emotions can run really high when you're fighting for your democracy. People who genuinely are coming from a good place can disagree on tactics, on strategies, on intermediate goals. That's normal. That is normal and okay for a diverse coalition like we've got here. My request, and our request always for these calls, is just have respect in your mind. Respect in your mind. These kind of democratic spaces are by their nature messy. That's cool. That means it's real. We don't always have to agree. We should always treat each other with respect. That's my only request. And just a note, a special welcome note, as we've been doing for the last few weeks, to our friendly and sometimes not so friendly MAGA infiltrator friends who are joining us. We regularly now see clips of these calls on, MAGA right-wing sites. Good news. This is a movement for everybody. If you voted for Donald Trump because you wanted lower prices of eggs or bread and you're getting fascism instead and you're upset, welcome to the movement. We are all fighting against the harm that this administration is doing. And if you're here to peek in on what a real pro-democracy movement looks like, it's open. This is how we organize a nonviolent mass opposition to a creeping authoritarian.
Man, I wish I could respond to trolls with this level of panache, because I usually just tell them that I fucked their moms, or would fuck their moms.
In the White House. We do it in the open. That's how we build a pro-democracy movement. So welcome, even if you're just here to gawk and then repost what we do on your own right-wing site. With that said, Leah, do you want to talk about the state of the world before we get to Q&A?
I'm gonna open it, and I'm gonna try to keep this pretty short.
God, I love the Peepo eggs emote so much. I'm so glad you guys are using it.
In part because I think I'm scanning the top voted questions, and most of them are different versions of, holy shit, we're in a constitutional crisis. What do we do? And so I want to talk about those. I want to kind of take it from up front. I think anybody who has been paying attention to the news over the last few weeks has seen a very, very frightening escalation in the Trump administration's onslaught. Every week has been bad since they came in. Every week has featured things that are dangerous and damaging and illegal. And also, I think a lot of us understand the combination of the abductions of innocent men from across their communities into a prison torture gulag in El Salvador to be an extraordinary departure from anything that our country, any of the laws, any of the values, any of the norms of this country, to be the fact that there is very open defiance. Sorry, there we go. I can use words. Defiance of the Supreme Court's unanimous decision to facilitate the return of one of those men. Incredibly damaging, incredibly frightening. And the scale and speed and ferocity of the Trump administration's attacks across civil society, on higher education, on law firms that we have seen. All of this is incredibly frightening. All of these things are the hallmarks of an escalating authoritarianism sweeping society. I want to bring into the conversation something that I have heard from scholars of nonviolent movements, that this is a classic tactic of authoritarians to propagate with all of their tools, with all of the force that they can possibly try to muster, the lie that they are already in control, that they already dominate society, that they have the right and the freedom and the ability to do these things without redress and without consequences. And the reason that they lean into that with the extraordinary ferocity and determination that they do is because it is a lie. It is a lie. It is possible to oppose them. Power does not rest solely with the administration. Power rests in towns and cities and states and elected officials and businesses and your own community and your own group. We have to harness it. We have to organize. We have to push back. But if we collectively do, our courage will inspire other people, and the results will stop them. Now,
and can I just say, like, this is part of the reason why I get so frustrated with people who have defeatist attitudes. Like, this is part of the reason why. It's because, like, that defeatism is exactly what this regime wants. It's what Donald Trump wants. It's what they all want, because that defeatism is, in essence, an acquiescence. It is an acceptance of this as the new status quo. It is saying, well, they already have all the power, even though they don't. It is a permission structure for them to get what they want. And the more of us that deny them that, both individually, as groups, as communities, as cities, as counties, as states, the better off we will be in this fight against fascism. Okay? Yeah, exactly. If what they were doing was working, they would not need the propaganda. And also, like, if they were not afraid of possible court interference or how the courts could galvanize us into action, they would not be playing so cagey about what they're doing.
I want to bring into this conversation something a really specific example of that. I have been talking to a number.
Like that sweet blasphemy. I love that. Remain hopeful, even if only out of pure spite. Spiteful hopefulness might be like one of the best ways to reframe how folks especially who are, currently maybe in doomering, maybe a hope out of spite is a pathway towards genuine hope. Not just because you want to spit in your opponent's eye.
Number of folks about what has happened at Harvard over the last week. The fact that the Harvard University administration has decided to decline or to refuse the incredibly dangerous, incredibly anti-democratic, open threat to free speech demands of the Trump administration, and is now bracing for potential consequences of that. I've talked to people who were organizing to try to make sure that Harvard did not give in to the administration. And what I have heard from multiple people is that the hands-off demonstrations were absolutely crucial to giving the folks who were organizing within Harvard the power, the confidence, the standing to say, there's opposition everywhere. You have to do it here too.
Yeah, because again, what she's talking about is like a permission structure. When people saw that gigantic protest on April 5th and saw it in every corner of the United States, even in unlikely corners of it, that gave permission, that empowered the people at Harvard who wanted to say no. Because I guarantee you there were people at Harvard who wanted to bow down and acquiesce to Donald Trump. I guarantee you. And when we stand up and when we make noise and when we protest, it isn't just for ourselves. It is for every single corner of this country that still believes in freedom, democracy, and the rule of law.
You have to help. You have to step forward. If you, an institution with billions and billions of dollars in your endowment, with all of the power and all of the alumni, et cetera, won't step forward, then who will? So if you were part of a hands-off demonstration and you thought, What happens after this? The answer is we're going to keep organizing. We're going to keep building, but also people see what we're doing and they step forward. They did it. It's happened this week. It'll happen again next week. Other people will be inspired by what is happening this week. We will show up again in force in the coming days. We're going to talk about how we do that. And we're going to keep pulling people forward with us.
Courage is contagious. I think everybody
Courage is contagious.
Everybody is saying it now, and it's because it's true. It really is true. Everybody in this moment is looking to their left and looking to their right to understand, well, should I step forward or not? When we step forward,
people follow.
People follow.
Yep.
Oh.
And we get phone calls.
And we get phone calls from random folks. So now we're going to go to Q&A. And just as a reminder for everybody, please put your questions into the chat through Zoom. If you put them there, then other people can see them, and then people can vote on them. And that's how we're going to decide what we answer. And so I appreciate people putting questions.
And Harvard does have that $5 billion trust, but like they're gonna be dipping into it. They got like $2.2 billion in funding cut.
In the chat. The chat moves so fast. It's very difficult for us to track questions there. So just a reminder, we've got about 45-ish minutes though. Should we get into the questions?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the top rated question from Kim with going on 770 votes says, how can we fight to hold the Trump administration accountable for defying the Supreme Court in relation to the Abrego Garcia case? Should we be pushing on the courts to fight back, pressure on Congress? Could putting pressure on attorney generals to arrest Trump be effective? There has been at least one with a conscience right. Or could Pam Bondi block them?
Yeah.
Great question, Kim. And it's one we've been wrestling internally too. And one of the things I appreciate about your question is how practical it is. The question is, what can we actually do? What is our leverage? And Leah, I'm not trying to filibuster, but I'm going to set you up to actually have some specifics. But one of the things we struggle with at Indivisible when something new bad happens, and this is a particularly heinous example of this, is we're on the same page. This is bad. The question is, okay, so what is our ask? Who has power to do something about this? And how do we organize to push those people? That kind of strategic thinking is what we all should be engaging in regularly throughout this administration, because some of us are going to have different power because we're in a blue state. Some of us are going to have different power because we have a member of Congress who occupies an important place. Some of us are going to have different power because there's a vulnerable Republican who maybe we can push. Some of us are going to have different power because of a state legislative opportunity. So this question of, okay, this is terrible. He is ignoring a court order. What do we do where we are? What a reasonable ask is something we've been wrestling with. Leah, do you want to talk about how we're coming at this and how we're working with partners on this?
Sure. So I'll say a few things. The first.
Oh, Caesar V. Harvard has already said to the Trump administration in so much legalese to kick rocks. So I believe other big schools are doing the same. I know MIT is. The eggheads are standing up.
First piece of this is there is an ongoing legal process to try to force the Trump administration into compliance. I'm not going to be the best authority on every in and out of it, but as I understand it, they have a limited amount of time to either comply or to turn over a bunch of documentation and have a series of conversations with the courts about why they are wildly not in compliance. That is a period of time in which what we can focus on is creating the conditions for overwhelming public opposition and demands from across the political system for them to release Kilmer and for them to facilitate the return of all of the other men who have been wrongfully imprisoned in a concentration camp. And I do not use those words lightly. The reality of the situation is, I think we've had a real challenge for the last couple of months with Democrats being hesitant to step forward on issues they perceive as related to immigration.
Yeah.
And, we can have all the discussions we want to have about 2024 and what was, what went into that election and whatever. But let's be really clear. The American public does not like the idea that Donald Trump can snatch people off the streets and decide to send them into a concentration camp without any due process,
literally the
any
least
chance
American
to ever make
thing.
It home to their families. This is not a situation in which Democrats should be afraid to be full-throatedly fighting to stop what is happening. Nobody likes this. The very visible threat that there is on the horizon that once they get away with this for men like Kilmer, they're going to use it for American citizens too. They're not being shy about this stuff. We have to understand this again as one of those situations in which our solidarity is both moral and strategic, because if they can do this to men who they are deeming to immigrants, then they can do this to anyone. And so we've just got to be really clear about that. And we've got to expect our leadership to do that. And we've got to expect Republicans to do that. This should not be a remotely partisan issue. Can the government snatch you and imprison you for life with no due process? Not a partisan issue. Now, I don't, that doesn't make me hope that Republicans are going to be profiles encouraged on this, but it does make me think that if we pressure enough of them, then they call the White House quietly and they say, hey, this is really freaking my constituents out. Can you please stop this whole thing right now? And that actually can make a little bit of room. So what I would say is we got to focus on the public conditions of outrage that are actually going to help drive the Supreme Court and the courts to get the outcome that they are ordering.
How do we do that?
How do we do that?
Yeah.
So always going to say contact your members of Congress. I'm going to say, I know that folks who are planning the 19th demonstrations and the May Day demonstrations, we're going to have this as a really core part of what we are talking about and what we are elevating. We're coming up with a suite of different tactics for folks to elevate this in your own communities. I am not sure if we have officially launched those yet. We're working really closely with the immigrant rights groups that are going to be at the core of the legal challenge here. So we want to make sure that we're doing it in partnership and in alignment. So stay tuned. We're going to have a whole set of asks for you on how we make sure that people understand the sheer horror of what is happening and understand how they can bring Kamar home.
Great. So Nancy asked a related question, but I do just want to, I think we should address this because, I mean, I think there's a lot of concern. We are in a legitimate constitutional crisis, and that feels
yeah.
bleak. Now, what do you do if
yeah.
the administration is just openly defying court orders? And when things look that bad, I think Nancy is raising this question of, other than civil war, what is the path that there is to stop total destruction of the government? I want to be very clear. The best way to push back against an authoritarian government is by widespread nonviolent organizing and protest. There is nothing that the administration would like to see more than some sort of violence in the street that they can then use as an excuse to crack down on normal everyday Americans organizing and protesting. So we embrace nonviolence as a hard-headed strategic matter. It is really important that we all embrace that, because if we don't, it endangers everybody else. I want to say that just very clearly. This isn't us just saying, well, we're uncomfortable with certain tactics or strategies. This is a hard-headed strategic choice to embrace nonviolence, peaceful protest, because that's how you build majority opposition to an authoritarian government. That is how you do it. I was talking with Timothy Snyder right before this about
Timothy Snyder, by the way, the author of On Tyranny, the book everyone's been talking about, with the first lesson being do not comply in advance. Like, it's a really good read. Well, we have to finish going through the lessons of the book. I think we have like 4 more left, but highly recommend it. And as we saw going through Erica Chenoweth's presentation, nonviolence is the most effective way of resisting authoritarianism. It helps galvanize support on your side, and violence has a very sketchy history of actually working to overthrow authoritarianism. And so what we need to do is we need to go out there, we need to be bold, and we need to be committed to nonviolence. And I know that is very frustrating, because there are some people who just, they want to have some feeling of agency, and violence is one of the ways people feel agency, you know? And like a child throwing a tantrum, like that is the only agency they feel they can have. And so, like, the French Revolution was nonviolent. Hey, what happened after the French Revolution? Just real quick. Just real quick. Just refresh our memories. What happened after the French Revolution in France? Just real quick. Anyone want to take a stab? Historically? They all went and saw the Minecraft movie together. I mean, eventually, I guess a lot of people in France probably saw the Minecraft movie. The Terror. And what happened after the Terror? What happened after that? What happened after the Reign of Terror? Napoleon Bonaparte. The original World War monger, who was a dictator.
The hands-off protest. And he said basically couldn't have gone better. 3 million people spread across every single state.
And as I've learned from the video game Banner of the Maid, he also had a very cute anime girl sister that history weirdly just never talks about.
Multiple countries, not a single incident reported. It was boisterous, it was fun, it was defiant, it was oppositional. It demonstrated to millions more Americans who did not participate that they can be part of this. That's how you stop an authoritarian in their tracks. That is the method. April 5th is not enough, but multiple April 5ths building and escalating over time, that's how you do it, y'all. That is building the muscle that prevents harm and ultimately takes power away from the authoritarians. The option is not civil war. It's widespread peaceful protest. That's how we're going to win, because the people are on our side. It's not just Kamala Harris voters who are on our side. It's not even just non-voters who are on our side right now. There are Trump voters and conservatives who see Americans being disappeared and say, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't like Democrats, but what is going on here?
People
That's
are
good.
aroused. I
We
haven't
want
seen
them on our
people
side.
so aroused in
And
a
we can
very,
bring them over
very
to our
long
side as
time.
this administration overreaches. Yeah, anything else on that? Okay.
That's great. I can take I think that next one. We've
kind of answered Robert's question. Okay. Going on to Michelle's question. There are a lot of old white people in Indivisible. Yay, old white people, says Michelle. Indeed. But what can we do to create a younger, more diverse organization and movement?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Well, so first, I do want to name, like, because I do get this question from folks quite a bit, and I think it's actually like a segue from the last point. I think it's really important in a moment like this when, you know, we've had a series of elections that have gone down along racially fragmented lines. I think it's important for folks who have more privilege, for, you know, because of our skin color, because we are older and we are more economically stable, for whatever side of reasons, it's important for us to be out there, physically apparent, and physically showing up and showing that we are in the fight and that we are committed to standing in solidarity. Now, like, I don't want to say it in terms of like, you know, other people are under attack and we're not. Let's be really clear. This administration is attacking all of us. It's attacking different people in different ways. There are some people who are at more immediate physical safety risk, but like, this is not, you know, the allies are showing up for everybody else. This is like every single person here's future well-being, our economic well-being, our safety, our freedom, our liberties, our idea of America as what it should be. All of it is bound up in organizing together. So I just want to say that. In terms of kind of like, what does it mean to build a more diverse movement? You know, this is such a question that I know a lot of local indivisible groups wrestle with. And what I have seen the work the best is really a deep commitment to partnership, to solidarity, to building the kinds of ties that it's not just about one protest. It's not just about one moment. It's actually about kind of an ongoing line of communication across your community with people who are organizing across communities under threat, you know, that where they know they can count on you and you show up for them and they show up with you. And so I would encourage you to think about it not just in terms of kind of who's coming to the meeting, but who are we in relation with? Because fundamentally, what is most important is that we are creating a big multiracial, pluralistic, progressive movement, a big tent across our wherever we are. That is fighting for the same set of things and that has each other's backs. So I think it's an important question, and I also think that the core is really about whether people feel like we're showing up for them.
Can I just add also, if this came out of a meeting that I was at yesterday, and I got some good feedback on it. I want to remind folks, 92% of Black women voted for Kamala Harris. 78% of Black men voted for Kamala Harris. The vast majority of people of color did not vote for Donald Trump. And many people of color are indeed organizing right now and doing a lot of good work. So if you don't see them at your events, if you don't see them at your protests, it is not because they are not doing the work, and you shouldn't assume that they are just sitting it out. They are doing a whole bunch of work, and they have been doing a lot of work for a lot of time. And it is okay to not organize everybody in the community. Your organizing home doesn't have to be the organizing home for everybody. But as Leah said, what we have a responsibility to do is ask ourselves, how do we show up in partnership with other folks that are doing important work on the ground? Yeah. That is something we can do.
Yeah. And just to ping on to that one, what I have seen not work with partnerships is if you kind of approach it as a purely transactional, you know, you show up to the local NAACP and you say, hey, let's come to the next Indivisible meeting. No, you got to build that partnership. You got to actually be in community with people in order to have the trust that actually fosters a meaningful multiracial progressive ecosystem.
Indeed. Cindy's asking a question. So Cindy's saying, I don't know.
Elizabeth, you missed the second screen. What do you mean? Do you mean like the little video game screen? Nani? I had a dog named Napoleon once. We thought he was a part retriever, but he ended up at like 130 pounds. Oh, on the DS. Man, the 3DS was like the perfect handheld.
I don't know if people have heard about this, but this is the next top voted question. If Trump goes ahead with this very expensive military parade that he wants for his birthday, I don't know if people have heard this, planning to spend something like $100 million on a bullshit.
Wait, what? Donald Trump is spending $100 million on his birthday party? I'm sorry, what? This is the first I've heard of this. He's planning to have a military parade for his 79th birthday. Oh my God. It's gonna cost It's gonna cost $92 million. Wait, no, it's not. The last one he held cost $92 million in 2018. You cannot run on waste, fraud, and abuse and then spend $100 million on your goddamn birthday. God damn it. I hate this man so much. The absolute fucking loathing I have for him is impossible to articulate. Hello. Welcome, Raiders. Echoplex Media, thank you very much for the raid. Welcome, folks. Come on in. We're learning how to be more productive in our activism.
Military parade through the streets of DC on his birthday in June. Asking is, can Indivisible plan another day of action nationwide? We could stay away from DC and have events in all 50 states like we did for Hands Off. We would have more attendees for Trump and show that we are stronger than him and his cronies. I would point out that this happens to be happening not just on his birthday, but on Flag Day, June 14th. So, Cindy, I'm not ready to announce.
Oh, I'm sure he's spinning it as, oh, it's just a celebration for the flag, because I love the flag. Isn't that right, folks? I love the American flag. I love it. The flag is just a little birthday boy. It's not a party for me. It's a party for the flag. The flag is the birthday boy, but give me presents, please.
Anything on this call. I can say we are actively in talks with other coalition partners who we helped plan Hands Off with about when is the next big national day of protest, and I'm hoping by next week on this call we'll be able to talk about what that date is. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, and it's not just indivisible. Like this has to be a big coalition movement action. That's what made Hands Off so incredibly impactful. But
okay, so next week we will have an update about when the next big protest day is. Again, I will remind people, April 19th is a day of protest in every single capital of every state in the United States. Check out more at 5051, their website. But I'm really looking forward to knowing what these two are up to, because I think Indivisible might be our best tool. Like, just, I'm really, really looking forward to it. Well, I'll keep you guys all updated. Don't you worry.
But I think you're onto something. I think it's a very interesting idea, and we should investigate all options and figure out what's going to work for all partners. But I like the idea, Cindy.
Yeah, and I will just offer like one kind of related reflection, which is folks may have noticed April 5th was very, very big. That was super cool. We did a ton of work with a bunch of other people across the ecosystem to make sure that when we came out with a date, we were able to all push together. And we really want to try to keep that up when Indivisible kind of goes all in on a date. Yeah. There are going to be additional moments that are coming up that other groups are helming and that a lot of Indivisible groups will throw in on. That is awesome. We love that. This is like a more the merrier situation. And also when we're going to kind of go big on a mass mobilization, we really want to make sure that we're going big with a lot of partners so that we can really make a big show of force.
Yep, that's right. Okay, next question from Stevie. With Trump likely to be held in contempt of court, is there any chance or action we can take to see impeachment and removal?
So here, this comes up a lot, and I will just say, I think that there's two different questions that we have to pull apart here. And one is, has the actions that Trump taken so far merited impeachment? And the answer to that is like, yes, on day 1 and day 2 and day 3. He has done so many things that are wildly unconstitutional and illegal and corrupt. I could spend the rest of this call just describing them, right? So there's kind of the question on the merits, and then there's the question of how do we recover political power to get back to the basic functional conditions of democracy? And the answer to that depends on building a majority coalition that involves pulling back people who we lost either to the couch or to Trump in 2024 and building them into a big, durable, popular opposition for democracy. And when we think about that, we're going to think about kind of two places where we really put our focus. And the first is on issues that are going to fracture their coalition and build ours, places where we can make inroads because someone feels personally threatened because something Trump did was not what they signed up for. But it's usually going to be an issue where we can talk about this tangible harm that is coming to you or your community or someone you love. And this is why they're doing it. These villains who are, doing it to enrich and empower themselves. That's the main issue. And then we're going to do stuff that's about harm mitigation. Where can we stop something bad from happening? Where can we limit the harm that's happening? Where can we show up for people who are under threat? Those are kind of the two big buckets of how we're thinking about it. Our assessment is that impeachment gets you into a process story pretty fast, as opposed to a story that is about harm and is a story that builds the bigger coalition. That's not to say that it's not merited. It is to say that right now what we want to focus on is really making sure people are hearing every day about the stuff that will touch them personally and that will pull them with us. Because when we have to push together as an opposition, we need them with us.
And that's a really good observation and insight. You know, like, I do think that it might come down to impeachment, but I don't really think it's necessarily worth me talking about it over and over and over again on my show. I just think I think it's something that a lot of people think is not in the cards, and we are incapable of achieving that. I think we could, but not for a while. Like, we still gotta cook. We gotta cook, and we gotta be able to, get to a point where, like, Congress is willing to, like, strip tariff power away from Donald Trump before they start thinking about, like, stripping him of the presidency.
Which isn't to say that you shouldn't call your member of Congress and say, hey, like,
great,
he should be impeached. Why aren't you calling for impeachment? Like, that is something you can do. And he obviously should be impeached. It's very clear. Right. And realistically, though, part of the question here was, realistically, will we see it? Look, y'all, we don't have the votes for impeachment. We don't have anywhere near the votes for conviction yet. Yeah. I think a half a dozen House members who are the most vulnerable on the Republican side should switch parties tomorrow. If they had 1 ounce of integrity, they would do that. Yeah. And they're not doing it. And me yelling at them to switch parties isn't going to get them to do it. So the question is, it is correct that he should be impeached. And we have a practical question, which is, how do we win? And that is a different question. How do we win?
Oh, yeah, it's not in the cards right now, but I suspect the material conditions are going to worsen significantly in the near future. I don't know exactly when. And I imagine when that happens, considering Republicans got spooked enough to, like, start bailing on his tariff reforms before he immediately dropped it all down to, like, 10% minus China. My guess is that his support among elected Republicans is a bit weaker than we might think it is. That's my only point. And I think to really see those cracks come to their full realization, it's going to take a lot more economic suffering, but that kind of economic suffering is kind of already baked in with what he's done so far. It's just kind of a matter of time.
Build the coalition necessary to stop the harm. Carol asked a question: are you, Ezra and Leah, being directly, personally threatened by the Trump administration? So here's what I say. As I mentioned at the top of the call, there are a lot of MAGA infiltrators on these calls, and we should assume that anything that we say on these calls will spread far and wide. Mm-hmm. I would say at a high level, the kinds of incoming that Leah and I are getting personally are more or less what we would have expected when we wrote the new Indivisible guide the weekend after the election, which is to say, we knew what we were getting into. We knew this was an authoritarian regime. We knew that they would be coming after those who actively organized and opposed them. That I've said this on calls before. First, they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We're one step from winning, y'all. We're just one step from winning. They're not.
I like this guy. I like his upbeat attitude. He's a guy who knows how to like speak about this, and I appreciate it, and I should take lessons from this.
Not ignoring us, and they're not laughing at us. They're fighting us. And that's a sign that we're effective. They are scared of widespread nonviolent protest. And sure, they come after us. They think we're the leaders of this. Look, we could be gone tomorrow. It doesn't matter. There are thousands and thousands of people all across the country who are leading this movement. They're up against much more than just little old me and Leah. So, we made the assessment that we need to be out there helping to organize the opposition movement. We're not going to be bullied back by them. That's not going to make us feel good. It's not going to keep anybody safe, and it's not going to lead to the outcome that we want to see. So I'm not more alarmed today than I was 4 months ago. What we are seeing is they see Indivisible broadly as being impactful, and they're responding to that. I take that as a compliment. Keep on keeping on, y'all. Anything else on that?
That's good.
Exactly, Liz Galahad.
Kim asked, RFK Jr.'s utter incompetence and insulting view on autism were on full display, indeed, in his press conference.
And we will talk about RFK and autism. We're just going to talk about that tomorrow because, frankly, I've been overwhelmed even trying to talk about a fraction of what's happened over the last couple days.
Conference this week. And thank you for all the emojis, y'all. That's very sweet. I guess I should comment on it. That's very nice. We feel the love in this movement. I think this is a very supportive movement to be organizing, and I hope everybody is getting that for their own community. Really appreciate it. Okay, so what's back on RFK Jr. What's the best way to fight back when cabinet members do harmful things like this? Since they're not publicly elected, I don't imagine this cabinet cares a whole lot about public opinion. Is there any precedent for public pressure getting cabinet members fired? So cabinet members can be impeached just like the president. Cabinet members can be fired. And also cabinet members can become so embarrassed by the administration that they choose to leave and try to save their reputation. RFK Jr., frankly, is a hard one on that front. He's got independent political support from wackos who don't believe in vaccines. So he feels like his base is behind him. He is unlikely to be impeached by the House or the Senate for the same reasons that Donald Trump is unlikely to be impeached. And so then the question is, could he be shamed in some way to backing off, or could Trump be shamed in some way to fire him? It seems unlikely. It seems unlikely. The best thing that I see that we can do relating to RFK Jr.'s actions is to, again, pull more and more people who are not currently part of our coalition and say, look, we might not agree on, I don't know, economic policy, on some social policy, but you're listening to this guy, RFK Jr., you support this guy who's doing all of these crazy things from his position of power. Like, it is fine.
You support this guy who thinks autistic people don't pay taxes and can't play baseball and won't go on dates? Like, God, I don't want to get too far into it, but like, RFK Jr. is absolutely crazy. You know, like, dude is going out and giving press conferences about the need to remove contaminants like thimerosal from vaccines when, like, we haven't used thimerosal in vaccines for like 30 years. Like, he's genuinely a nut job. Honest question, what is up with his voice? My understanding is that he has like a genetic condition with like his vocal cords or something. I don't know. Haven't looked into it because I just don't care that much about like why his voice is that way. Jack, aren't you happy you have official word that you don't have to pay taxes anymore? Yeah, it's great. I didn't know about the have autism, don't have to pay taxes loophole. It's crazy.
To be a Republican. It is fine to be a conservative, but RFK Jr. really? I would use it as a mechanism to organize people into the movement, is what I would use. I would not hold out as your goal for success getting RFK out. It's not obvious to me where the leverage is, what levers we can pull in order to get there.
I will also just add on this point, we could talk for a long time about RFK and his particular brand of toxic politics, but he does have an independent base of support. And if you look at like favorability across the MAGA cabinet, he actually polls better than a bunch of the other people. And that's because he has, developed this kind of twisted reputation of caring about like healthy food or caring, the Make America Healthy Again stuff. This stuff is incredibly damaging. And so I just want to double plus Ezra's point that what we first have to do is really like undermine the public perception that anything about what he is doing is about public health. He is a crank. He is a conspiracy theorist. He is corrupt. He has gotten a bunch of children killed with his lies about vaccines, and he is wrecking the foundation.
I mean, he's actively getting more children killed in Texas with his lies about vaccines. So like, he's done it in the past. He's doing it again. And he's going to continue to do it. Like, how many children are you fine sacrificing because of RFK Jr.? Get him out.
For public health, for science, for research into diseases that you and your family rely on. And he is spreading this eliminationist, unbelievably ableist stuff about autism. That is so many different communities who need to understand what is happening and that he's coming for them. And so let's think about how do we organize to get the word out about the fact that, people who have a general idea that he's kind of an anti-system politician, they need to understand that he actually poses a real threat to their lives.
Indeed. Just a reminder, y'all, the way we're getting these questions, we're not making them up. I'm literally reading them at the same time you hear them from me. I'm reading them for the first time. And if you want us to answer a question, you should ask it or vote for one that's already in there. We're just going through the top voted questions. So the next one comes from Nina with about 250 votes. Nina says, we need to start planning how we could support and sustain multi-day, round-the-clock sit-in type protests as things are getting to that point. People need to think about what shifts they could take, who could care for their pets, get their meds to them, who could be on roles like providing safety and food and water. How do we do this safely, under the radar, but most effectively and in a coordinated way? Can we set up a national alert status that people can check in to find when it's time to, quote unquote, hit the streets and not leave? Maybe the call to action at this point is, quote unquote, enough. This question of a national strike or a mass national protest is one that we've been talking about, gosh, basically since the election, right, Leah?
This is one of the more interesting possibilities for protest. And, barring some kind of gigantic catalyst to get people willing to engage in a national strike type event, I would normally say like that's basically not doable, right? But these are not normal times, and like people are angry as fuck. And it is very possible that we get to a point in a relatively short amount of time, if things keep going the way they're going, that where people are willing to just sit down and be like, no more. I will not be moved. I can see that happening. And that's a really, really interesting possibility. Especially because these tariffs have galvanized a lot, like the tariffs, the disappearances, the kidnappings, etc., have galvanized a lot of unions to come together and vocally oppose the administration. And I think that between unions, between general hatred of Donald Trump, I think that there is I think there's a decent possibility that we could actually see some kind of, if not a mass general strikes kind of breaking out in kind of sporadic forms.
Yeah, and it's a question we've been grappling with for this entire time. What I would say about this is, I think you're right that we very well may be headed in this direction of a society-wide protest, not just an activist level protest, not just a few million, but maybe tens of millions of people taking part of in protest against authoritarianism around the country and around the world. What we are doing when we protest on at the town halls in February, or the empty town halls in March, or on April 5th, or on April 19th, or on Earth Day, or on May Day, or maybe in June, what we are doing here is not in one fell swoop taking care of a problem. We are building a muscle. We are building a muscle. We are pulling more people into the movement. We are developing the infrastructure necessary to get bigger. Because if your theory of winning against the authoritarians is mass peaceful protest, what's the first word? Mass. It's got to be big. It's got to be overwhelming. And you don't just snap your fingers and get there. You build over time.
And not only that, but like one of the things about building a mass movement is you are capable of doing more and more the more people you get involved, right? Like a general strike isn't really going to work if you only have a movement of, say, like several 100,000 people. Like, people might take notice of it, but like a general strike isn't really going to be a thing. If you have a couple million people, that has a bit more teeth to it, but it's still not enough. If you have like 20 million people, that's starting to get really interesting. 100 million is the goal. We'll see.
You build over time. So the only thing that I would quibble with in your question, Nina, is the idea that we could do this under the radar. The nature of this work is that much of this has to be public. That's how you pull people in. There are obviously elements to any protest, like technical elements, that are going to be behind the scenes just because that's how it works. But the vast majority of this has to be us building a movement that people want to be part of, that people understand it's worthwhile for them to participate in. It's not a drag for them to participate in. They're not going to be judged for being latecomers. Hopefully it is fun and inviting and empowering, and it grows. That's what we're trying to build here. And April 5th was the largest single day of protest in many, many years.
Yep.
Hopefully this is an inflection point as we build and build and build. Anything else? Okay. Oh, great. Abby asked a good question. We've been getting questions on this for a while, on the SAVE Act, or as we call it, the Silencing Americans Act. So this is the anti-democracy bill that the Republicans have been pushing through the House, and it recently passed through the House. But Abby asks, regarding this, which Democratic senators are voting yes, or still undecided. Who should we be calling at this point? I saw this question came in, and I Googled because I wanted the full list. I want to flag there were 4 Democratic House members who voted for the SAVE Act, this Republican bill to make it more difficult for people to vote, specifically, I mean, especially women to vote, people who have changed their names to vote, but it does a lot of other gnarly stuff too. Jared Golden in Maine, Glusenkamp Perez in Washington, Henry Cuellar in Texas, and Ed Case in Hawaii. Now, Jared Golden, Glusenkamp Perez, they're in really tough districts. I don't think they win any votes by voting for the SAVE Act. I don't think it's a good political move, but they maybe be able to justify them reaching out to Republicans and showing I can work with the other side. I think it's stupid. I think it's bad. I don't think they should do it. But I understand the kind of tired political logic that would give a Golden or a Gluesenkamp Perez to vote for something like this. Cuellar and Ed Case, inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. Cuellar, I would argue, is one of the worst members of the House Democratic Caucus.
Yeah.
He's pro-gun and anti-abortion. He has been a thorn in the side of the Democratic Caucus for years and years and years. God, he worked for George W. Bush, I believe, before he became a member of Congress. Cuellar sucks. He should be primaried. Full stop. He should be primaried. Now, I'm not going to do that, but I hope indivisible groups in Cuellar's district and other folks understand that he's not a real Democrat. He's not actually a real Democrat. He's not fighting for the Democratic caucus, and he's sowing discord. I think Cuellar's bad. Ed Case is, though, I would have to say, the worst of the bunch. Ed Case is in the safest possible district that you could imagine in Hawaii. There is no Republican that's going to be elected to Ed Case's district, y'all. Ain't going to happen. This is somebody in one of the safest Democratic districts in the country, and he's voting with Republicans on an anti-Democratic bill. I know indivisible groups in Hawaii are furious at Ed Case. Look, we'll see when and if this primary challenge comes, but Ed Case should not be a Democratic member of Congress. If he wants to vote for a Republican anti-democracy bill, he should become a Republican. Run as a Republican in Hawaii. You're welcome to, Ed Case. Go run as a Republican. We do not need you in our caucus. So, again, not up to me. I'm not a Hawaiian.
I like
I'm not
the
going to be there
language.
to launch the primary challenge. And if the indivisible groups don't want to do it in Hawaii, you know what Indivisible National does not do? We do not parachute into districts and then pick primary challenges. That's not what we do. It's got to be up to the locals. But as an external observer, what I would say is the House Democratic Caucus would be far better off if Ed Case lost his job.
Okay. The question, though, was about the Senate.
Okay, sorry. I was just very angry about Ed Case. Actually, with the Senate, I'm feeling pretty good. Do you want to talk about the Senate?
Yeah. So I think the Senate, the last list that I saw had a few people that you would expect, like Fetterman is, being Fetterman. And then a set of the folks who haven't disclosed how they're voting are from purple states. We just want to call them extra times to make sure. Folks like Gallego, the New Hampshire senators, a few other people. What I would say is this is the kind of situation where we can have targets list after targets list. You just want a wall of overwhelming opposition for every Democratic senator because you want people who are leaning to vote no. You want people who are voting no to understand not only this is like a no, but it's a hell no. This is toxic and awful and totally unacceptable to the Democratic base so that they can tell their fellows who are leaning. It continues to be a full court press. Now, remember, this is a bill that requires cloture, which means that if we hold the Democratic caucus together, it will not move forward. And so we are not, normally we're like, how do we peel off 3 Republicans? How do we peel off 4 Republicans? This is not a situation that requires 4 Republicans. It simply requires us to hold the Democratic caucus.
Which is why you should use 5calls.org. I've linked it in every single chat. Call your Democratic senators. Okay? They are currently out of town, I believe, until Monday of next week. God, is it Monday of next week? No, until the 28th. Sorry. That gives you a lot of time to call their local offices. You don't need to call their DC offices, call their local offices, okay? And you call them once every single day. And you can also fax them. Many of them have fax numbers. You can fax about the SAVE Act. You can send them faxes. There is a website titled Fax Zero, I believe. Yes, Fax Congress. Actually, they have a page for faxing your senators. Here you go. Folks, you can send faxes for free to your senators. I'm going to link that into chat. A lot of folks in the Senate and the House might not be answering their phones. I do still encourage you. I know it might feel like you're not doing anything. I guarantee you how every single one of these offices works is that someone working in that office, their job is to tally up the different voicemails that are left, who has left voice, like who called, what about, etc. And so call every day. Call every day. However, call every day about a new topic. Okay? That's how you maximize. That's why it's called 5 calls. So you make 5 calls during the weekday, and each one is about a different topic that will maximize the impact of your calling, and then you can reset the next week. Okay? But, you could also throw in at the end, also oppose the SAVE Act. Okay? I like the faxing, way easy, and it gets something physical into their office immediately. It's such a great thing. Marianne, thank you very much for the tier 1 sub over on Twitch. I appreciate it. Thank you for supporting the stream.
Caucus mostly united. So let's keep going.
Oh, somebody is reporting, Marlene, Indivisible Hawaii had 85 protesters outside Ed Case's local office yesterday.
Shout out to
well done.
Hawaii.
And the reason why this is important, y'all, so really shout out to Indivisible Hawaii. They're really good. The reason why this is important is not just to take it out on Ed Case, although we should do that. He should suffer political consequences for this. But it also sends an important signal to the senators. Because one thing that happens when a bill passes the House is Democratic senators will look and see, well, how controversial was it? Was there a lot of Democratic support in the House or wasn't there? And for the Democrats who did vote for it.
I really encourage you not to fax porn to Ted Cruz. I believe that would probably result somehow in you getting arrested. Don't get arrested for a joke.
Did they get blowback? Were people angry about it? And if what they see is either one, there was a lot of Democratic support, there wasn't, which is good. Or two, there wasn't a lot of Democratic support and those who voted for the bill on the Democratic side in the House didn't get much blowback. Then they might say, well, okay, it's not dangerous for me to support this bill. That's not the message we want in the Senate. The message we want in the Senate is if you vote for this bill, you are going to hear from tons of your own constituents and there are going to be political consequences. So take advantage. I mean, for those who are represented.
Yeah, I have no knowledge of those things. Again, and literally anyone can make an indivisible group. Like, no, there's no organizational structure to Indivisible. Like, you can just go and make an Indivisible event and group and chapter. Like, literally anyone can do that. So, like, it's not, there's no vetting. They aren't hired people who are in charge of these different Indivisible chapters. It's just people. And, of course, people are also going to be shitty sometimes. Really. Like, these are like the two people who work at Indivisible.
By these members. If you're in Maine, if you're in Washington, if you're in Texas, if you're in Hawaii, and you're in one of these districts, it is a good thing to very visibly provide that pushback in this moment. That will help in the Senate, even though you don't have senators, except for in Maine, you don't have senators that you have to worry about for this vote. Okay, next question. Moving through, Diana Smith asks, what's the plan for May Day? Is Indivisible partnering, and will there be large-scale protests in D.C.?
Yes. Okay, great question. Yes, we are partnering. If you joined the Hands Off What's Next call last night, you heard about the plans across the ecosystem for May Day. We are throwing in with our brothers and sisters in labor, our brothers and sisters in the immigrant rights movement to do a big cross-issue push to say stop.
I feel like I talked about that at one point, Lady Raincloud, and I'm not really sure. I don't remember what happened, but there was something weird that happened, and I can't remember what it was.
The billionaire giveaway, stop billionaires from wrecking our government and taking our rights. I know that there are a bunch of folks who are on this call who are going to be part of those actions. They're going to be a little different in different places. I think it's going to be across the week, and so people have the flexibility to do it on different days. But we're really excited. We think that's another big moment, or another moment over this month. We're going to have the April 19th protests that 5051 is called for. We're going to have the May Day protests. There's going to be Earth Day actions. These are the collective moments that we keep building kind of the wave and onboarding new people who maybe they didn't come out for one.
It's a thing that was in, again, like your mileage is gonna vary, but like a lot of Indivisible chapters have events for like this one. I just pulled this up. Weekly Stand for Palestine Vigil Indivisible event in Appleton, Wisconsin, and like that's fucking Appleton, Wisconsin, man. Like it's crazy. But like again, literally anyone can start those, and there might be people who are shitty on Palestine.
Reason, but they'll come out because it's a labor movement moment.
Great. Christine asks, what if pilots refuse to deport prisoners or anyone else? He can't do this shit without willing participants. How do we reach those involved in this to appeal to their humanity? Pilots, flight attendants, ground crew, etc. What if decent airline owners agreed to find jobs for them when they walk off of their jobs? How do we reach those in the military in order to do these jobs? I know this is a little bit pie in the sky, but isn't this also how we reject authoritarianism and fascism?
It's not pie in the sky. Non-compliance is a really important part of the toolkit for pushing back on authoritarianism. And by non-compliance, I mean simply refusing to do things that you are expected to do. That can be everything from boycotts to, if you have a job that you view as taking you into beyond the pale morally, refusing to do it, walking off the job. and everything in between. Now, what I would say on this is there is the thing that we can do if we're not in those jobs is we can create the political and cultural conditions in which people feel like they have to step forward. That sounds a little academic, right? But part of the theory behind large-scale mass nonviolent protests is because they send a message to possible defectors, possible people who are empowered with some part of the regime's functions to say, one, there is big popular support if I step back, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do. And two, to send the message that a day is coming when democracy reasserts itself, right? Because part of the way in which you flip people to our side is you say, come join us, you know that this is what's right. And part of the way you flip people to your side is you say, there's going to be a day after this regime and you're going to have to live with what you've done and you're going to have to face the rest of us. And so those two things together help to move some set of people when we're talking about, people who are being tasked with enforcing these unbelievably illegal and immoral orders. So what I would say here is, yes, this is part of the overall overall strategy. There are people who are thinking about how do you organize, there's a flight attendants union that is actually actively thinking about what do they do and how do they encounter these things. But the piece that we can do right now is figure out how we make the opposition big and bold and powerful and irresistible, because that is going to help give people the courage to do what they need to do in their own roles.
Here. Just want to point out, Leah you were referencing Donald Trump is a lame duck president. He's got some bullshit about running again. He's not going to be president in 2029. Somebody else is going to be president in 2029. And the universities, the business leaders, the news institutions, the law firms, the elected officials, we're still going to be here. They're still going to be there. And they are going to have to deal with what they have become in 2029. And that is not that far off. So I think it's a very key point, Leah. I've tried to say it as elegantly as you, and I failed repeatedly, and I'm going to keep on working on it. I would just also want to point out, Jim in the comments said that he reached out to Fetterman and got a response that Fetterman is against the SAVE Act.
Great.
So that's great.
Good job, everybody.
That is great.
It's the goods.
Yeah, no, and just to be clear, look, Fetterman's, I think people have a lot of problems with Fetterman. That's okay. That's okay. It's okay to not have this be your favorite senator. And also, when somebody who is not your favorite senator or representative does take a stance you want, thank them for it. Thank them for taking the right stance. We want people to take the right stance. They don't have to be our heroes or our best friends. They just need to do the thing we want them to do, and then we will celebrate them for it. That's how we build a majority against the bad stuff the Republicans are doing.
That's right.
Okay, so we answered Christine's. Going on to next. Kim, we already answered the question on the SAVE Act. Joy, we kind of already answered impeachment, right? Yeah, we answered impeachment earlier. Okay, going to Lori. Can there be a high-level strategic team similar to the viral Dear Democratic Party level letter that's going viral? We need a quote-unquote war room, a multifaceted team, legal, military, political, etc., a plan, and then a leader who can drive the plan forward. We are the army. Time is of the essence. Why isn't this being done?
I think we might pair that with the next question, because I think they're actually about the same letter.
Okay, great. And then Christine asked, how do we get Dems to behave like the Constitution is on fire? Because it is. Did you see the letter that Dr. Prue-Lee wrote? It was a tribute. I didn't know it was a tribute to Liz Cheney, but we can share the letter too. So Leah, do you want to combine them?
Yes, and I should just say I have not read the letter, so I don't want, if I say something that seems wrong in relation to it, Ezra, I don't know if you've read this viral letter.
I just tossed it to you, so I didn't have to admit that I hadn't read it.
Okay, I think I heard about it like yesterday, so it's not a refusal to read it. I just haven't seen it yet.
I've got it up. You talk and I'll read it.
Okay, great, wonderful. So I think that the answer to question number one lies in question number two, which is that if the Democratic leadership believed that this was a crisis requiring a totally different mindset and use of tools, as opposed to a moment in which they should mostly try to give positive, media-friendly quotes about the need for lower prices, we'd be in a completely different world to begin with. The reality has been that Democratic leadership has adopted this pretty misguided assessment that they lost in 2024 due to a lack of focus on lower prices, and that the way forward is to kind of single-mindedly ignore most of what Trump is doing, to take the James Carville phrase, play dead or play possum, and let Donald Trump take himself down. This is, just to be really clear, not the way that authoritarianism has ended in anywhere ever. It is.
I mean, it's providing a permission structure. You are giving permission to the authoritarian to take more power.
It's simply like a huge failure of responsibility by an opposition party to decline to be the organizing center for small d democracy. And so to the extent that the question is like, why hasn't this happened? It's because you actually have to convince, leadership has to believe that it is a crisis necessitating that sort of strategy and tactics in order to move into that into that mindset. I'm going to say that's as much as I can say without having read the letter, just to be honest.
So I just read it and I like the letter a lot. I think the letter is pretty good. I might have some questions about some of the specific recommendations, but the basic argument that we need our Democratic elected officials to be leading an aggressive opposition party is right. For folks who are new to the Indivisible movement, after Chuck Schumer caved on the Republican funding bill and gave the Republicans the votes that they needed and gave up Democratic leverage and announced that he did not think this was a crisis, but might become one sometime in the future, we called an emergency meeting of indivisible groups from across the country. About 1,300 of them came to the meeting, and we took a vote. Should Indivisible call for Chuck Schumer to step down from leadership? And more than 90% said, yes, we should call for Chuck Schumer to step down. So Indivisible is on the record calling for Chuck Schumer to step down from leadership. Right before this call, I was on the call with the journalist talking about the call for new Democratic leadership. We need a Democratic Party that treats this like a crisis. Full stop. The main division within the Democratic Party right now is not between left and right or left and establishment. It's not generational. It's not even old versus young, new member versus long-term member. The main division is, do you believe this is politics as usual, or do you believe this is a unique crisis that we need to respond to? And that's a legitimate difference. Yeah. I want to be clear. Those are two strategic differences. I'm not calling into question, what makes Chuck Schumer tick or his morality or his dedication to public service. He just does not believe we live in the world that I believe we live in. And from that flows a lot of differences in strategy and tactics and goals. Because if you believe that we are in a normal political moment.
Well, I mean, he believes he's in the world of the Baileys. The Baileys world. His own little imaginary world.
Rolling over and playing dead makes a lot of sense. Presidents become unpopular over time. Usually the other party wins in the midterms. If you just lay low and allow Trump and the MAGAs to sink themselves, we'll be fine. I understand that. It's not confusing me. I understand that point of view. I deeply disagree with it because I think we're in a crisis. I think the authoritarians are steamrolling our republic, and we might not make it through 2028 with the kind of constitutional republic I want us to have unless we organize and fight back. That's where I am. I believe that's where rank and file Democrats are as well. Yep. Chuck Schumer has a 21% approval rating. He is one of the least popular elected officials in this country. He cannot dream of having an approval rating at the level of an Elon Musk or even a Donald Trump. They're in the mid-30s or the low 40s. So the leader of the unified opposition to a fascist MAGA movement is one of the least popular elected officials in this country who does not believe we're in a crisis. That's the reality. That's where we are. So this letter is speaking. It speaks really well to me, but I think it speaks to what a lot of people feel, which is, gosh, you see a Maxwell Frost, you see a Jasmine Crockett, you see a Chris Murphy, you see a Chris Van Hollen, you see some members out there who very clearly are Booker, who are very clearly describing the crisis we're in. And then you see the rest of the party, or a lot of members of the party, just not moving, not acting like that, or saying the words, but not actually matching that with their actions. If you want a party that treats this like a crisis, you got to demand it. You can't accept the Ed Cases of the world. You can't accept the Chuck Schumers of the world. You've got to demand something better. And if you don't demand something better, we're not going to get it. Full stop, y'all. The party is not going to change itself because it's like, well, it's the right thing to do. We're going to shift. It will change if we push it. Not a single U.S. senator has called for Chuck Schumer to step down from leadership. 2, maybe 3 House Democrats have called for Chuck Schumer to step down from leadership. Why not? Why not? This guy is an anchor on the party. This guy is leading us in the wrong direction. Why aren't we out there and having this conversation now? I don't want to be having this conversation a month before the 2026 midterms. We should be cleaning house now. We should be setting the party in the right direction now to limit harm and also to set us up to take power next year. But your favorite senator, pick who's your favorite senator. They have not called for Chuck Schumer.
I mean, I think Chuck Schumer will be viewed historically as, a Neville Chamberlain type. He'll be viewed as somebody who collaborated and who failed utterly in his attempt to do so.
Schumer to step down from leadership. Your favorite House member, unless it's one of these 2 or 3, hasn't either. You got to demand it if you want it. And if we don't demand it, ain't going to happen.
Ready.
Okay.
On that note, so I think we've got time for like one more.
Okay, sorry. When I get on my soapbox about Chuck Schumer,
time for more, but
Leah was for a little behind the scenes look. Leah's tapping my my knee, saying, "Okay, it's time to stop."
3 minutes, yes, 5 minutes now.
Okay, now, let's try to do a couple more. Oh, Mika Sifri wrote in. Let's answer Mika's. Can you shed more light on 5051? Mika's just a great organizer. Can you shed more light on 5051? Who is organizing it? How do they make decisions, etc.? And I skipped Lori, and we always do the top voted. So sorry, Mika. We should also answer. Can there be?
Well, that we already answered.
Oh, we already answered that. Excellent. Okay, so let's go to Mika.
Okay. Yeah. So 5051.
Yeah, I don't know much about 5051. It's what made me hesitant to talk about their events in the first place.
decentralized movement started on Reddit with a call to protest in 50 states, or all 50 states at state capitals in February, has since sprung into a lot of hubs, I believe state and often local hubs all over the country of folks who are regularly staging different mobilizations, actions, interventions. We partnered, I know a bunch of people on this call partnered with local 50/50 ones over the course of Hands Off. And I know that those have led to a bunch of collaborations on the upcoming April 19th, which is the next date that the 50/51 folks are throwing in on. It was great. My understanding is that there's a democratic process within, or that there's some kind of democratic decision-making process amongst organizers within the movement, but I'm not super clear on all of the details. But we definitely, this is the kind of organic movement formation that comes into existence in a moment like this. And it's really a more the merrier, exciting infusion of new people that we want to just try and do our best to partner with and work with wherever we can.
That's great. Love organic movements and energy coming up to Show for Democracy. So speaking of that, we are at 4:01. We're slightly past time. We got through all of the questions. They got more than.
All right. I think we're done. I'd very much like it if SCOTUS defines this year how many terms any president is ever allowed to serve. Well, we already have it very clearly defined, not by SCOTUS. But yeah, I think that is good. I don't know. This helped me to feel better. Hope it helped you guys to feel better. Hope it felt empowering. Hope you feel like we have a little bit better of a handle on what's happening, where the moving pieces are, what we can do. It helped. Good. Because I think a lot of people are. They feel like they're blowing in the wind a little bit, and a lot of people are not really sure what to do next, or they want to take their issue and make it the main issue, but the main issue here is getting fascism out. We need to get this fascist administration gone. We need to make sure that they are thwarted at every turn to do the things they want to do, to destroy us, to destroy our lives, to erode our democracy, to, kill trans people, to deny us healthcare, to disappear folks off the streets. We need to make sure we are mobilizing en masse, because together we are much stronger than we are separately.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube and switchy streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, daily, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat.